Welcome back to Tranquility du Jour, nourishing conversations about living a full and meaningful life with doses of tranquility. This is episode 508. I'm Kimberly Wilson, and I'm your host, bringing you tranquility since 2005 through this medium and through other mediums since 1999, when I founded a yoga studio, Tranquil Space. And it's been such an interesting evolution. And I have to say, the morphing and the continued kind of changes within this world, especially right now, I just cannot say enough how grateful I am for this community, because we've been connecting really online since '04, whenever I started a blog. And Melinda, who you're going to hear from today, has been a part of it for a very, very long time. So I'm just delighted to have her back on the show. It's Melinda Parkhurst, and you'll actually see her all over the clothing line photos, because she's absolutely stunning, loves tranquility, and loves sustainability. So we're going to be talking about ways to incorporate more plants into your diet, even if you, like me, love pizza and French fries. A typical day of meals for her. She's an amazing gardener, and sustainable living in general. So this is a do not miss. A big thank you again to everyone who joined me for Fall TDJ Live on the 20th. A big welcome to this brand new season. It's my absolute favorite. We've got chunky sweaters, we've got tall boots, we've got falling leaves, we've got chilly weather, we've got pumpkins, we've got hot cocoa. It's just like my absolute favorite. And if you would like to download the replay, it's a 1-hour video, you'll find information on that in the show notes. And that can be found at KimberlyWilson.com. The number of this podcast, which is 508, so /508. And there's a link to my brand new e-course, TDJ Lifestyle, which is coming on October 12th. Now, this is a 5-week e-course that we will be diving into the 5 tenets of TDJ. So wellness, style, creativity, compassion, and mindfulness. Would love to have you join us. There's 2 tiers. There's Classic and Luxe, and it's my first e-course in a year and my last one for a bit. So I hope you'll be able to join. And also, if you're a planner, January 1st, New Year's virtual retreat happening from 2 to 5 p.m. Eastern Time. Links to all of this in the show notes. Melinda takes a holistic approach to life and revels in all things creative while being kind to the earth. She's an author, tribal fusion dancer, avid gardener, mixed media artist, and photographer. She has a master's in transpersonal psychology and is a certified vegan lifestyle coach and educator. She's pursuing a meditation teacher certificate and professional coaching certificate. She's passionate about rescue dogs and volunteers with organizations that help eradicate hunger in the local community. She believes that everyone who desires to find their authentic self, develop their creative voice, or live a more healthful lifestyle can do so, even with limited resources. She believes it is never too late to start the journey. It just takes letting go of expectations and enjoying the process. Welcome, Melinda.
Hi, Kimberly.
So it's a treat to have you back on the show and chatting all things plant-based living.
It's been a while since we talked, and I am so pleased to have this opportunity.
Well, this is something that I just think you are so good at. I mean, describing, talking about, sharing, living. And I remember when you did the book event last year, I was like, oh, she just does this in such a great way where it's so accessible and relatable. And so tell us a little bit about your journey into plant-based living.
Well, my journey, I had to think about it. Looking back, it sort of came in bits and pieces, and it evolved over my entire lifetime. I'm currently, I eat mainly plant-based. I'm probably about 98% plant-based or vegan. And I eat vegetarian maybe about 2% of the time. My journey began as a child when I got my first pet. At about 6 years old, I got my first dog, and I really connected with animals, and they just became a part of my life. And I wanted to help nurture and care for them. And also, my father was in the military, so we traveled quite a bit, and we lived in some foreign countries where they have a different connection to animals and a way of living. And I got to see that and see how different it was. And I think it's at that point that I really connected that the animals and the food we were eating were one and the same. And as a young child, I don't think I realized that. But in the markets overseas, it's much more, they're much more connected to their food. So you could tell that, animals were being eaten, whereas we have a little more distance when you go to a grocery store. Everything is all packaged up, and often people don't even realize, they just don't think about it. So that also started to, sort of sink into the background of my mind. Then also we lived in Texas, which is a big cattle raising and cattle industry. And then at one point I lived in Delaware, which is a very large in chicken and poultry industry. And being exposed to those environments, although, not being steeped in it, but just being aware of it, made me realize that that's not something that I wanted to eat, and that I wanted to be more nurturing to animals. So, and now more recently, especially with concerns about the coronavirus and the connection to foreign countries that have less regulation and they eat more exotic animals, and the fear of the spread of disease from animals to humans, I think it's even more important for us to think about what we're eating to also preserve our health, but also the health of other animals where the diseases are transmitted from animal to animal and from animal to human, but also the workers that work in these industries where they are working in agricultural farming and in all of the processing plants, that their health and safety is something that we should be very concerned about as well. And so all of that is part of why I became very interested in plant-based living.
So yeah, so that's quite the journey, right? From like childhood and oh my gosh, yes, Texas. I mean, cows everywhere. I definitely see that when I go home to Oklahoma too. And, it's just different, right? I think here, say we're in the city-ish, or we right outside the city in Washington, D.C., and that's just not stuff that we are exposed to. And you're right. So things are just packaged up. And so to recognize kind of the connection, at such a young age is actually quite impressive.
Yes, it was, I think, sort of eye-opening. I had no idea. And it made a huge impression on me. I remember to this day, I was about 8. And it has stayed with me all my life.
Now, what benefits have you noticed from eating mainly plants or, vegetarian? You probably started out vegetarian.
I did start out vegetarian. Immediately I noticed that my digestion was better from eating the standard American diet. That I believe that just having less richness in my diet, cutting out a lot of the cheeses and the fats and things like that, helped my digestion. I felt lighter. Another big improvement that I noticed were my nails. My fingernails used to always sort of peel in layers, and that went away after a few weeks, and my nails got really strong, and they started to grow long, which they wouldn't because they were always flaking and pulling apart. And just, I feel like I have more energy because my digestion doesn't have to work as hard. For me, it feels that way. And I have also improved my health in general. I think I'm more aware of what I'm eating, and so I make better choices. And I think also it just makes me feel more vibrant because I'm eating a much cleaner diet.
Yeah, that's one thing that you hear a lot, right? Is energy and smoother skin and things along those lines.
Definitely. People commented, I did remember getting a lot of comments when I first switched over, that my skin, they're like, your skin is so beautiful. What are you doing? What have you changed about your cleaning or your moisturizer? And it wasn't any of that. It was just that my skin didn't have to work so hard at detoxing all of those things that I was eating that my body was having a hard time processing.
Now, it's not even for you a kind of, I think of a plant-based living really as like an all-encompassing lifestyle, because you're so into the various sustainability practices. And I love following you on Instagram and seeing all of your beautiful produce, from your garden, everything that you grow and whatnot. So how does plant-based living tie into like your everyday life from a sustainability perspective?
It has a huge impact. I think that they kind of go hand in hand, but I think that maybe the eating just also fueled that concern even more. I love growing. Even as a child, I started growing my own food. When I was little, I had my dad outside digging in the desert in Texas, trying to grow tomatoes and things, and he went along with it. And so I just got great joy from being outside and trying to grow our own food. My family was a big foodie. All of us were and still are. So we always cooked together in the kitchen, went shopping together, and thought about what we were eating, even though our diet was probably lean more towards the standard diet, but it was part of our thinking about the things that we were putting into our body. And then that also led to, well, how can I be more conscious about what I'm buying and consuming so that I'm not wasting so many things? I think there's so much food waste in our country I really love working with organizations that help feed those who don't have. And so I often will do volunteer work with the food banks or with the central kitchen, just because I think food is so important, and it connects us and it comforts us, and it's a way to share information and share a community. It's something that's vital to all of us.
And then what about with sewing and kind of slow fashion in general, as I think of you with that with regard to sustainability?
That also comes out of, well, where are you buying your clothes from? And are the people that are making your clothes, are they, earning a fair wage? And I want to, have a smaller footprint. So I tend to want to try to either buy locally if I can, or often would make my own clothes too. My mom also taught me to sew, and we often would make our own because even with our shape, and it was easier for us to tailor things to our body type. It's a little easier now. There's much more diversity, but this way we could use natural fabrics if we could find them, or locally made fabrics and sort of artsy fabrics that were made locally that other people, so we could have maybe the same sort of outfit, but it would be very different because you have an influence from the places that we travel, and things would be much more sustainable and local. So it just becomes a lifestyle. It just gets woven in so many ways.
And any secrets for having a garden like yours? I mean, the produce that you produce is like, oh my gosh, I mean, I think sunshine is necessary, but like, what else?
Water.
Yes, water.
Thing. So I have rain barrels, so that also ties into the sort of the same sustainability, and also trying to support that without being a drain on the local resources. So I can't water my entire garden with that, but I do as much as I can. Also good soil, building good soil. So my garden is mostly raised beds because here we have a lot of sandy soil, and I live in an old neighborhood. So I don't, who knows what all is steeped in the soil. But so I built up. So I was able to build a really rich soil over the years. And every year I replenish with more compost. So I compost from our house because we eat mainly plants. So I can, have a big compost bin, and I spread that out amongst the veggies, and just trial and error, because I know there are people who are experts and they study all this, and I just go out and it's sort of an intuition thing. You sort of watch things. Well, that's not working. Let me move it over here, and I'll read about things, but a lot of it comes from just being out there and watching and listening and feeling and just being involved in being a part of the whole process.
So what's a typical day of meals like for you? Like, is it kind of based on what you pull from the garden that day, or are you a meal planner?
I do a little bit of all of those things. Some days my meals are governed by what I have an overabundance of and I haven't had a chance to process it yet. And other times it's what I feel like having, and it's like, oh, I really have a taste for something, and I'll create it at home. I love creating like similar taste from things that I try outside the home, or of the things that I used to love that aren't so healthy. I try to make healthier versions of it. So my breakfast in the summer, since it's hot now, tends to be a smoothie made from greens from the garden, and fruits. If I have fruits, I have a small amount of fruits in our garden, fruits and greens, and supplements like things like acai powder or maca powder, plant milk, sometimes just water. If it's really hot, I want something really light, frozen bananas. Other times, sometimes I'll have a salad. Sometimes a salad sounds good in the morning. It just does. So I'll have a nice cool salad. Then for lunch, I tend to eat leftovers from the meals from before. And often that's a salad or a sort of a nourish bowl or a Buddha bowl. And the same for dinner. The dinner can be a variety of things. And then I always make extra for, lunches the following days. I do like to do meal prep because I find that it helps save a lot of time, which allows me more time in the garden and to do other things. So we often will prep a lot of different vegetables and proteins and starch, like on a Sunday, take a couple of hours and just slice up a bunch of different vegetables and put them in their own little containers. So maybe I'll pick a bean for the week. I'll either make beans or use some canned beans. Like this week we'll have pinto beans. And so maybe I'll be inspired to go sort of more Mexican that week. So I'll chop up tomatoes and have some avocados ready to chop up as we go, and cut up bell peppers and have all these in little containers, shred up carrots and have lettuce and greens packed, so that on a day, if you feel like a salad, you can take all those ingredients and make a salad. Or if you want something heartier, maybe you'll take some rice or a grain and put those toppings on top and make a hearty bowl. But it's always ready. All you have to do is pull out the containers, you mix and match what you want. Everybody in your family, if they like different things, can mix and match what they want and leave out what they don't. So we tend to do a lot of that kind of eating, so that, somebody wants pasta, well, we make a little pasta and they have all these toppings that they can put on top and warm up or eat cold, however they like.
Nice. Yeah, I love that. I like the variety, because I think sometimes people can feel like, oh, what do you eat? Pasta? And it's like, well, it's not really a plant, but how do you encourage listeners who are like, I'm somebody who I love pizza and French fries, right? So it can be like, all right, you got to get some plants in there. So how would you encourage people to kind of incorporate more plants into their diet, even if they're not like ready to go hog wild, what is the saying, like whole hog, which is like such a random statement, but yes, it's like, but they're like, I feel like I could use some more fresh.
I like pizza and French fries too.
Thank you.
And there's nothing wrong with those things in moderation. And also, especially if you're cooking at home, or you can make choices when you go out, you can ask for extra vegetables on your pizza. Or if you're making it at home, it's a pizza night is fun, because then again, everybody can sort of do their own thing. But you can have a crust and have, again, all of these vegetables that you had already cut up for other things. You can just then top your pizza and put some vegan cheese or no cheese, or if you're eating regular cheese, you can do that and, put that in the oven or put it on the grill and off you go. But for I'm always incorporating more vegetables into everything that I can, because the more vegetables you eat, the more nutrient dense your diet will be. So I will grate zucchini into even oatmeal. Like if you like oatmeal for breakfast, if you grate some zucchini in it and cook that in there, you won't really taste it. Zucchini is pretty neutral. And you can, if people are like, no, vegetables for breakfast. We'll call it zucchini bread oatmeal and put some cinnamon in it, some nuts and raisins. And, you could feed it to families like, look at this zucchini bread oatmeal. And all of a sudden they don't realize the vegetables in it. So I grate vegetables into a lot of things. I will put them into, if I do bake, I'll grate a little bit of a neutral tasting vegetable into the batter. Also, a lot of sides will be just vegetables. You steam them or fry them in a little, well, you could, saute them in a little oil, or I grill a lot of things. If you make them tasty and season them the way that you like, you're more likely to eat them.
Yeah, it's often all about the seasoning, right? Because if you think about, a lot of meats, like the one thing I used to love about steak as a child kind of growing up was the A1 steak sauce. Like that was my favorite thing, and it's kind of like we can get all of that, the seasonings, the flavorings, the sauces, and put it on other things like tofu or vegetables.
Exactly. Barbecue sauce is the thing that I love, and I will use barbecue sauce on a lot of things that people probably would use ketchup or maybe salsa on. I like a little bit of barbecue sauce on them. It is all about the sauces. A lot of times people find food they're like, it's so plain, or you're just eating a salad. Well, a salad doesn't even have to have lettuce in it to start off. It can be very hearty and be full of beans and other hearty vegetables. A salad can be warm. It can have things like sweet potato and other heartier greens and be slightly warm. So it's if you like it, and even if other people think it's a weird combination, that's okay. If you're going to eat it, then that you should go for it.
And you know what I recently did? So we get the meal kit, Purple Carrot, which is great. So it's a vegan meal delivery system. Because Tim and I were always like, what do we eat? I don't know. What do you want? I don't know. And so we were like, okay, here we will have a mission. But then I found that, that's great, but I don't cook. So he makes those. But then I just recently signed up. Maybe over the past 2 months, I've been doing Daily Harvest. And it's great because it's like stuff that you have to like put in the microwave for 5 minutes. It comes made and you just have to like heat it up. And then it also comes with all these, kind of smoothie bowls, a bunch of different ones. And so, you get all these frozen like fruits and veggies, and then you just put them in the blender with some water and voila. And, smoothies have never really been an issue for me because I can throw a bunch of stuff in there, but these are exotic because it'll have like dragon fruit and, and like papaya. Stuff that I don't necessarily pick up at the grocery store. So that's kind of fun too, listeners. If you're like, I don't know how to do all this, there are some really great options and it's not really that expensive. I was surprised by, how reasonably priced Daily Harvest was or is.
That's a great point. That I think you don't have to make everything. I love to do that, but not everybody does. I don't like cleanup, so I leave that for the other people in the house. I do all the cooking and they clean up. So and I do use convenience foods from time to time. So if there's something available that's easy for you, like this, the service that you've tried. And now when you do go to make your smoothies, I bet you'll think, if you're in the grocery store and you notice some of these things that have been in your smoothies, now you'll be more adventuresome and try to make them at home yourself. And you also mentioned that it wasn't very expensive. And sometimes people say that they think that eating this way can be very expensive. And it can be just like eating any other way can be, but there are ways to, save money by you don't have to buy everything organic and you don't have to have all these exotic things. You can eat pretty much the way you used to eat and eat a lot of familiar foods and just substitute more vegetables or vegetarian options instead of the meat, the milk, and the, eggs. You choose plant-based options, and you can make familiar foods and ease your way into having a more plant-based diet that's a healthier diet for you.
Yeah, it's a great reminder. That yes, this stuff, the fact that like Daily Harvest, all this stuff is prepared. So it's a little bit more if I, go to the grocery store and buy it myself. But I think you're so right of just recognizing, that we don't have to do all organic. And, there's a lot of ways to work with this. There's, I think it's plant-based on a budget. There's a lot of wonderful kind of websites and videos and, different things out there for people who are concerned about, well, like how much will that cost? And, if we think about it too, from a healthcare perspective, it's like, how much will it cost compared to, not eating enough fruits and vegetables, right?
That's exactly true. And there is a website, the Environmental Working Group, they always list the Dirty Dozen and the Clean 15. And they point out the fruits and vegetables that have the most pesticides. And if that's, something, if you have an opportunity to make a choice between, which one of these, if I can buy this one conventional, because you're peeling it, then you'd spend less money on it. Why you can save your money for one of the items that is known to have a lot of pesticide on it and spend your budget on those things organic. But if you can't afford any organic, eating more vegetables, even if they're all conventionally grown, is still better for you.
Now, one of the things that you talked about at the talk that I heard you give, which I loved, is you mentioned that you allow yourself cheats. And I think it was birthday cake and like say cheese at a cocktail party. So earlier you said, 98% of the time, mainly plant-based or are plant-based, then 2%, are these sort of experiences. And it's funny, I recently met up with someone who his wife and his child, they're all vegan. And I said, well, what do you guys do about birthday cake? And he said, all birthday cake is vegan. And I just loved it. He just laughed because he's like, you know what? That's where we're just like, our child's already different because she's like vegan, and so he's like, we just indulge in the birthday cake and just, are like, yeah. It's vegan. In our heart, it's vegan. So, tell me like kind of how you have worked with this, because I do think this is tricky for people, even people who are like, well, I'm mostly vegetarian, but, maybe they have fish or, it's like how to kind of work with these labels, align them with your values, but also recognize that sometimes, you want to have grandma's birthday cake.
I think it's important to just, your intention is all, that is, if your intention is to do the best you can, you will succeed. And you should never beat yourself up about it. If you make a choice and you feel like, oh, I should have chosen something else, well, at least you're aware of it. And maybe next time you can. But for me, if someone like my family is big on making cakes and things like that, and they do try to accommodate me, but if it's somebody's birthday and they've chosen, this family recipe of the chocolate cake and that's what they want, I'm not going to say, oh, we can't have that because, I can't eat it. I probably wouldn't prepare it. But if I go to someone's house and they've made all that effort and it's vegetarian, I will eat it. For me, I don't eat meat, but for somebody else that might be fine. So you just have to decide what's important to you. And also, if you decide to, make a choice that isn't your norm, that's okay. Don't beat yourself up about it. Plus, the more you eat this way, the less often you can indulge that way without suffering consequences of that, because your body isn't used to processing and your insides have different bacteria in it. And I can't I can't digest those kinds of things anymore. So if I were to eat something, which I had to when I was somewhere and I couldn't get anything, everything had meat in it. I was in a little tiny town and I tried to get some corn or green beans, from this salad bar, but everything had ham in it. And I was like, well, I'll try to pick around it until we can get to the next place where I can get some food. I was so sick because my body can't tolerate even the smallest amount. So you learn and you adjust, and it's all okay.
And birthday cake is vegan.
And birthday cake is vegan.
I love that. I love that. And he just said it like so pan-faced. I was like, oh my gosh, that is like, and he's very strict, but just not with birthday cake. So I just thought that was funny.
Yeah. You got to pick your battles.
Yes. Can you talk us through maybe a few like super easy recipes? I mean, like something that even I could do.
Sure. One of the things I think that people don't really think about that they're easy to make. We talked about having sauces and flavorings. Salad dressing, making your own salad dressing, even if you're buying maybe you're getting some prepared foods. If you make your own salad dressing, it'll save you a lot of money, and you'll also you can tailor it to your taste. But it also eliminates if you look at salad dressings, a lot of times you wonder, is it a chemistry experiment? Where's the food? But it's very easy to throw together a salad dressing. So a basic salad dressing is a half cup of nut or seed butter, so like tahini. And a quarter cup of lemon juice or vinegar, so an acid. And then garlic, you can either chop up or mince a clove of garlic, or use about a quarter teaspoon of garlic powder. And then you can use about a half teaspoon of salt if you like salt. I usually skip the salt, and about a teaspoon to a tablespoon of maple syrup to sweeten it up a little bit, and as much water as you like to make it as thick or thin as you like. And that's a basic salad dressing that's sort of it's got some fat in it, some healthy fat from nuts and seeds, and it's got an acid, and a little sweet sour. You can add spicy things to it. You can add some sriracha or some chili flakes if you like spice. You change up your nut or seed butter to make it Asian flavored. You could do the peanut butter and add just a little bit of sesame oil, or add some chopped herbs or poppy seed. It's easy. You just shake it up in a jar, or you can blend it in a blender if you're going to use whole, like garlic or whole herbs. But you can just put that in a jar and shake it up, and that you're good. You can drizzle that on all of those things that maybe seem a little bit bland. And then, like I said, one of my favorite things is doing the salad bar. So that'll save you so much time. Cut up a bunch of vegetables, either cook beans or open your cans and get everything ready. Put everything in containers, chop up tomatoes, make some rice or make quinoa, or if you like pasta, make a little bit of that. Put all that in your refrigerator and mix and match. You can make tacos, like a taco salad one night. You can make a pasta bowl another night. It'll save you so much time, and you'll have so much variety that you won't miss going out. Especially now, it's a little harder to go out to get anything to eat, and it'll save you a lot of money, and you'll feel really good inside.
I'm salivating as you talk about the taco salad. I'm like, oh my gosh, that sounds amazing.
And you can make that into nachos too. You take your tortilla chips, you sprinkle a little bit of vegan cheese on there, and toast those up a little bit, and then put all the salad on top, and you can have a nice taco, like your nachos, or a big salad. Put salad stuff. It's junk food that's healthy, right? It's like you're talking about the pizza and the fries. There are healthier ways to make all of these things.
Yeah, no, great reminders. And one other thing that I love are protein balls. Like, I'm getting them from Daily Harvest right now, but Tim used to make these for me a lot, and I don't know if you have made them or if you have a kind of a favorite recipe, but listeners, it's like mainly dates, like rolled oats, chia seeds, vegan chocolate chips. We put in a little vegan protein powder, and then some almond butter. And then, you just kind of like roll it all together into little balls, and then you put them in the freezer. And those are so good because sometimes you're like, oh, I'm a little snack hungry, but or it's like, oh, I kind of am hungry, but like I just need a little something to get me going. Now I'll do like spoonfuls of, like a spoon of peanut butter, right? But this is great because you get so much in it and it's, packed with protein.
And those are great for taking with you when you're running errands, or you need to be somewhere or you're traveling and you don't know how long it's going to be before you can find someplace that you might want to stop to eat. Or like these days, it's just like, it might take you a whole lot longer to do something that normally wouldn't have taken you so long. That if you have a snack like that, that will help tide you over. You won't get grumpy and you won't be going for something that's totally unhealthy somewhere, if you have something like that in your bag.
No, absolutely. We don't want to get hangry. It's not pretty.
No, it's not.
Well, my last question for you, Melinda, is the name of the podcast, as you know, is Tranquility du Jour. And I'm curious for you, how do you find tranquility in the everyday? Like, I'm thinking gardening is probably high up there.
It is. Being out in nature anyway, in the garden, walking the dogs, that's probably my number one way of finding a little bit of calm in the day, but also doing something creative. And it doesn't have to be, sometimes I do painting or dance or things like that, but it can be something as simple as laying out my meal in a really artful way so that it's beautiful to all the senses. Sometimes we're in a hurry and we need to, just get that nutrition in. But if you have some time to sit and enjoy the food that you have, whether you prepared it or someone else prepared it, if you lay it out, it can be a beautiful to all the senses and just bring you back to the present moment. And that's something that's worth more than anything else, having those little moments all throughout the day.
Yeah, I love that. It's just a reminder of these everyday experiences, and we're eating, right? We're bathing, we're getting dressed. So it's like how to elevate these to not just to-dos or tasks, but actual experiences. I love that.
Yes, you're very good at that. You always, in your blogs and your pictures, you give a lot of examples of ways to sprinkle that throughout your day, which is why I love following all of your Instagram and blog posts as well.
Oh, thank you. Thank you. Yeah, it is. It does make life a little more pleasurable, delightful, right? So yes. Juicy.
Yes, exactly.
Well, thank you so much, Melinda, for being on the show again. And listeners, I will have a link to her former podcast interview also. And we'll also have links to some of the resources we discussed, including my protein balls recipe. And yeah, thank you so much, Melinda, for being here with us again.
Well, you're welcome. And thank you so much for having me. It's always a treat.
So over in the show notes, you will find ways to find Melinda, her website, melindaparkhurst.com. That's Melinda, Parkhurst.com. Also on Facebook, Instagram, Pinterest, and a link to my previous interview with the lovely Melinda. She was number 302. And there's additional ways for us to connect. Always love hearing from you guys and having you part of my everyday, whether or not it's on Facebook or Instagram, and sending you love notes. So be sure to subscribe to the weekly love note if you haven't already. And also link to my 6 books and planner. And finally, if you have a moment to share a review of this podcast on iTunes or your favorite resource for podcast, would be so grateful. My hope is it helps other people find more tranquility in their days. Namaste.